This moment could not be more important. Across the American culture, there are those determined to topple our shared history and highlight the most painful and difficult moments of our past in order to divide us. This mob, whether it's Antifa or Black Lives Matter, disgruntled millennials escaping lockdown, or elites accomplishing on the street what they couldn't at the ballot box, they're all children of this man, Howard Ziinn. Now, Zinn was a radical activist and political science professor with a soft spot for Stalin and Mao. In 1980, he authored a book, A People's History of the United States. It's essentially an irreverent, tendentious manifesto of anti-American hate, which retells the American story as one founded in sin and mired in hate. To Zinn, America's a wicked place that needs to come down. His book has been standard reading at universities for decades. Now we have Zinn's successor, the New York Times 1619 Project. This is another revisionist American story, a history, purportedly, that claims the country began when slavery came to our shores. Forget those evil founding fathers who envisioned the republic and sacrificed to create it. Those slaves are the true American founders in the 1619 perception. Washington, Jefferson, Adams, they're to be despised. 1619 is now part of the curriculum in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Buffalo schools, with more coming online every day. These are the radical ideas and warped histories that are slipped into the hearts of the young. It explains the random chaos, the destruction we've been witnessing in our streets. If you believe America's an evil place founded on sin, it's got to end. Now everything's on the chopping block, even Mount Rushmore.
We have to return the land, this stolen land, back to indigenous people. Mount Rushmore is really a national symbolism, a symbol of white supremacy.
Now they have 4 white guys carved right into the mountain. One of them being Abraham Lincoln, who still holds the record for, hanging the most indigenous people in a single day.
Now, that Lakota tribesman is referring to the 1862 hanging of 38 Sioux Indians. The background is this: more than 300 Santee Sioux were found guilty of raping and murdering white settlers. They were actually reacting to horrible government mistreatment at their reservations. Lincoln, recognizing that, commuted the death sentences of all but 38 of those Indians. Now, given the times, given his sensitivity to the plight of the Sioux, should Lincoln's memory be canceled all these years later? Or should we wrestle with the complex history and learn from it and the failings and the glories of that time, that moment? And it's not just monuments. Sports is the latest battleground in this culture war, one of the last remaining neutral zones in American life. Now corporate sponsors are pressuring the Washington Redskins to change their name. Nike has pulled Redskin gear off their website, and the team announced today they are considering a name change, even though a 2016 Washington Post found that 9 in 10 Native Americans say they are not offended by the Washington Redskins name. The NFL is announcing that before the national anthem, get this, Lift Every Voice and Sing, what they call the Black National Anthem, will be sung at every Week 1 game. They're also deciding whether players will be allowed to wear the names of victims of police violence on their jerseys. Over at the NBA, there are plans afoot to paint the words Black Lives Matter on court sides, similar to what we've seen in the streets of D.C. At least one commentator, former NFL All-Pro Marcellus Wiley, wasn't sold on the idea.
There's a problem with when you start to go down this road of the freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and how much social space is allowed for those who don't support in that same space. We know what identity politics does. It divides and it polarizes. I don't know how many people really look into the mission statement of Black Lives Matter. Being a father and a husband, that's my mission in life right now. How do I reconcile that, what I just told you, with this mission statement that says, quote, we dismantle the patriarchal practice. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement. So I understand, I respect your space. I respect what you're protesting for. But will you respect others who don't support that same protest?
Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, the freedom to disagree, and our history must be protected at all costs. America's not a collection of separatist movements. We're founded as one fractious, diverse, but united people. The president's appearance at Mount Rushmore tonight is an important one. It couldn't come at a more important moment. It is at once a challenge to the lockdown mentality as well as a stand against the cancel culture and those who seek to rip us apart over our differences. As we participate in this patriotic event tonight, together, as one people, we face a choice as Americans. We will either make a decision to be one nation under God, indivisible, or a nation riven by grievance, race, and resentment of our brothers and sisters. I hope we make the right choice this July 4th and embrace our better angels. Joining me now is Sarah Carter, Fox News contributor and host of the Sarah Carter Show podcast. Bill McGurn, Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter for George W. Bush. And Victor Davis Hanson, Hoover Institution Senior Fellow. Thank you all for being here. Sarah, I want to start with you. As we await the start of President Trump's arrival here at Mount Rushmore, what does the president have to accomplish here tonight, in your opinion?
Unity. He needs to really bring the nation together, and he needs to deliver this fiery speech so that people understand that we're a nation built on fundamental principles, not of division, not of divisiveness, but of unity, a republic that's built on freedom, independence, and liberty, and equality. And when we talk about this, Raymond, when we think about what's happened over the last month, when we think about the protests, when we think about the division, when we think about the angst that so many people feel, all we have to do is look back in our history and say, yes, of course, nobody is perfect. No nation is perfect. Every nation, every person is mired with something. But those fundamental principles that he will be talking about is what moves us forward. It's what made our nation so great. And it's what makes us a beacon of light for the rest of the world. And it's why so many people have come here looking for that freedom and liberty.
Bill McGurn, these protests and the rioting seem to question the very legitimacy of the American experiment. What is at stake this July 4th for us?
Well, they don't seem to question the legitimacy. They do question the legitimacy. Look, a lot of this is just about disruption and offending people's sensibilities to ruin it for other people. You know, the president has a fairly traditional understanding of patriotism. He likes military parades. He likes the fireworks. He likes all that stuff. I think the most important thing he does is just to not let people keep him in a corner and show up. I don't hold much prospect for unity, no matter what he says, because at this point it's so polarized. And part of the polarization is between people whom, as you mentioned, between Howard Ziinn and the 1619 Project. They believe America has been not just founded with slavery, as though that's just a date, but corrupted, a secular version of original sin that we're still we're still suffering. I mean, look at what everything is racist today. The White House is racist because slaves helped build it. Betsy Ross and her flag are racist. I mean, everything is racist. And a lot of people just say, oh, that's ridiculous. But it makes a certain perverse sense if you start from the premise, like the 1619 Project do, that we were conceived in sin and we're still affected by it.
But it was clear, Bill, there was a disconnect between the founders, deep disagreements. I mean, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were on opposite sides of the slavery question, one deeply committed to the freedom of all people, the other, though intellectually agreeing to the concept, lived a very different life on his plantation at not Mount Vernon, Monticello. Victor, speak to the red-blue state division here. What's the historical precedent that you see?
In 1861, Lincoln gave a 4th of July letter and address to Congress, and it was as divisive, much more divisive than it is now. And he wanted unity, but it's very hard to have unity when a small proportion the states don't want unity. So what Lincoln did is he said, basically, I have bent over backwards. I'm going to protect federal property. I don't want you to do what you're doing. And when he addressed people who were against unity in the Union, but he reassured the others that he was going to be firm. And so I think Donald Trump's got to say, you know, we have 244 links in this chain, years, and our generation is not going to be the first one to break it. I'm sorry. People died in Okinawa, they died at Gettysburg, they died at Shiloh. We have an obligation to them to carry on that spirit, and I'm not going to preside over the first generation that says we're going to tear down statues, we're going to rename on the demands of the mob, we're going to cancel people's lives out with McCarthyite tactics. So he can be unifying, but he has to be unifying by restoration and by saying that we are a great nation. And just as Lincoln did, he warned the Confederacy, I want to be part of you, but if you don't want to be part of me, it's not a very wise decision on your part, because we have blue state mayors and governors who deliberately did not enforce the law. We have corporate CEOs, we have retired generals, we have university presidents who know better. But either out of weakness or timidity or fear, they're allowing people to change our customs, our traditions, our icons, and our reference. And somebody has to say, we're not going to do that. We don't want to offend you. We don't want to go to war with you, but we're not going to let you, a minority, dictate to a majority that's trying to keep a wonderful nation, the only multiracial democracy that's ever worked in the last 244 years.